We'll move on to some additional forms starting with the billing form. The billing form, like the details form, is a relatively simple cookie cutter form. Today I might have made it with the instant UI and would have been done with it, but when I wrote this code we didn't have that class yet. Despite the fact that the UI looks simple, the layout is non-trivial. First we have a border layout that encloses the form. We use that to keep the green button at the bottom of the form regardless of size or scrolling. Next we have the content container, which is a box Y container that includes the whole user interface except for the button. We mark it as Y scrollable further down in the code, so we can scroll through elements within. It's important that text fields always reside in a Y scrollable container, so the virtual keyboard will have space to work with. And finally we have the table. The numeric values are too small to give them each a line, so I packed them in a 2x2 table. The entire table is added to the content later on. Notice that the table container isn't scrollable, as nesting scrollables is a mobile bad idea or bad practice. We don't have scroll bars, so when we swipe, the implementation needs to guess which scrollable we actually mean, and that might not end well. As I mentioned before, this code predated the binding API and didn't use it. So we have some helper code such as the adds as double method, which automatically parses the text value, and if it's not a double, returns the existing value. This allows us to automatically update the property. Binding would have made this code simpler and shorter. Next we add the elements to the table. I'm not really sure why I chose to do a 2x2 table with box layout instead of a 2x4 layout, so we can place everything directly into the table. Possibly it was force of habit. Both approaches work though. The separator line allows us to differentiate between the Braintree arguments and the rest of the billing details. I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. A separator here is just a component with 1 pixel padding and a grayish color. Normally a label without text is hidden by default, but if we invoke setShow even if blank, it will be rendered even if there is no text or icon. There isn't all that much here in the final part of the billing form. It's just the things I've mentioned above, like the scrollable Y of the content pane and its placement in the center. Now let's look at sending this data to the server side. Up until now, when we sent data, it didn't include all the information we needed. So we created a new version of the app settings call with the restaurant details. This allows us to still reuse the existing object from the restaurant model. This is a bit of a hack, so let's go over what I did here. In the app settings class, I get the value of the object as a map object. I then add all the properties from the restaurant object to create one large JSON object containing everything I need in the server, which doesn't have a distinction between the two. Then I'll remove the cart and menu entries. These entries are big and I don't need them for this specific API as they have their own model. I also remove the logo and title background images as they have separate web service. You might recall from before that basic things like title, tagline, etc. weren't persisted anyway. Well, now we have a bind to preferences method that just implicitly saves and restores from preferences. That way, restaurant data is implicitly saved locally in preferences. It's not SQLite, but it works and saves some of the effort. Today, after the improvements we have in the SQL map, I might have used that, or I might have used the seamless preferences persistence we have built in.